Hopefully, hopefully everybody's summer is off to I keep saying great start, but it's already late July now, which is crazy to me how fast things are moving. Um, so yeah, as Beth said, she asked me earlier today, what I was planning to talk about. And to be completely honest with you all, I wasn't exactly sure what I want. There's always a bunch of different things in my mind that I could talk about. And I landed on this topic of chronolocation. And what is that is probably a good place to start. So first, I don't think that that's a real word and maybe not even a real thing. Um, I first saw this word come up a couple of years ago. So my day job has always been in national security, and it's changed around a little bit lately, but there's a there's a company out there called Bellingcat, and they're online. They've got a really interesting website. And basically, what they do is they look at social media posts from across the world. And let's say you've got some kind of significant event. Let's say, an insurgent group is fighting with an army in maybe Syria or something, right? And we've got people posting social media pictures from the ground of where this actual conflict is taking place, like the physical location, right? We can see the people shooting at each other. We can see buildings. We can see the dirt roads, whatever it is. So this company, Bellingcat, what they are experts at is very quickly looking at a picture from the ground and then figuring out based on just the little details they can see in the picture exactly on the map where that thing took place. And as you can imagine, this is really, really valuable for a lot of reasons. If you've got somebody that you're, trying to find and they're posting pictures and you have some details about buildings or other kind of components of the backgrounds in the scenes, having people with the expertise to very quickly know exactly where that is on the map is a useful skill set. And when I was looking at this site a few years ago, they used this word chronolocation, and I just thought it was like an interesting term. And it's basically just the idea of using maps and other imagery to pinpoint a specific location through time, right? So in my case, and the way that we're using it here, and I suspect we've all kind of done this in some form or fashion, but what I love doing, probably one of my favorite things to do with history stuff in this area, is to try to get a sense of when we see pictures or we see an old house or we drive past an old house, what has that place looked like through time? How have things changed over time? Um, in a lot of occasions, and we've talked about this before, there are old homes that are no longer with us, that have been torn down at some point. And so it's always like interesting to me to try to figure out like, A, when did it get torn down? And we can figure that out generally. But B, like where specifically was it located? And I'm not sure like what to do with that information, but it just feels important sometimes when we're seeing pictures in our area to be able to kind of place it in another location or place it in time, in space. So what I thought I would do is just walk through like three different examples of this that I really like and just find really interesting. And then I'll show you a couple of the tools that I love using online in case this is of interest to you. Or sometimes I see a lot of questions on the town Facebook page or the Pools Will Now and Then page where people will ask a question that kind of deals with this subject. And I'm going to try to arm you with the tools to be able to answer those questions as they come up. So let's start here. So I've got this picture of this band on the main page in here. This is zoomed in. And so if I showed you this picture and I said, I want you to tell me exactly where on the map this is located, would you be able to do that? Right. And that is like a fun, interesting challenge to kind of figure out. Now, probably need to give you a few more details, and these details are with the picture. And the details are that The picture was taken in 1862, right? No surprise, these look like Civil War soldiers to me. The picture was taken of the 20th Massachusetts Regiment, which is potentially an important detail. Um, and that this picture was taken just outside of Poolesville. Obviously, a very important detail if we're trying to find the specific location, right? So with that information and this picture, what can we try to figure out? So, one thing we can do is start, and I should give a massive hat tip here to Jim Poole because a lot of this, some of this work I'm about to show you, he did most of it and kind of passed it on to me. So I'm very much stealing from him as he has advised me to do. But um, when we look into the 20th Massachusetts, it's a really interesting unit from the Civil War. It was known as the Harvard unit because many of the individuals that served in this unit were graduates of Harvard University. Um, we know that this unit, over the course of the Civil War, fought in a significant number of battles, really all of the major ones throughout the Civil War. Um, and we know that when they were near Poolesville, they were staying at a place called that they called Camp Benton. And we know that from some old maps. We also have, these were all, not all, but a lot of Harvard grads. So there's actually a lot of letters and correspondence between members of this unit back with their family in Massachusetts. And in those letters, they give us a number of clues about where to find Camp Benton. There's a specific letter that talks about this location being 2 miles outside of Poolesville, that it is between Poolesville and Edwards Ferry, which kind of points us in the direction towards the river. No surprise. Um, we know that they fought in the Battle of Ball's Bluff, which was, down near the river, near Poolesville here. Um, and when we look on maps, we can pretty quickly find a better sense of the location for where Camp Benton is located. Um, this picture here, this painting, is from Winslow Homer. He's a very famous artist from the Civil War times, painted a number of really famous, beautiful pictures. One of the paintings that he painted was this one, and it's titled something like Officers Conversing at Camp Benton outside Poolesville. Um, and I would just note, and I'll talk more about this in a second, just note the big log, this log structure back here in the background. So we know, actually, I'm going to come back to this one. Let's see. We know that Camp Benton is located um, in the fields near this farm here, which is this farmhouse still standing. And it was near kind of the intersection. It's basically the road. Obviously, this intersection didn't exist exactly like this back in 1862, but we know essentially from the maps and from the correspondence that Camp Benton was kind of located down in this area. And if you're wondering where this is in the larger scheme of things, this is Westerly Road coming from Poolesville. So Poolesville would be kind of in your upper right up here if you continued to follow that road. This is that kind of T intersection at the end when you turn left on Edwards Ferry. If you followed this, you would end up at Edwards Ferry. So it's down relatively close to the river. We know the farm is here, and if you look closely at this image of the band again, what we see in the far background here is this structure, right? We see this structure, and we also see what looks like the outlines of this this little log kind of home or smokehouse, right? And so what we think, based on kind of the location of the picture, based on the fact that it's at Camp Benton with this unit, is that what we're looking at here is essentially soldiers probably standing somewhere down in this area. Camera kind of here looking at them. And then this is kind of the backdrop with this being that farm back there, right? So kind of cool to be able to place it. I would also note just kind of some interesting little details. So, and this is complete legend and lore and very well might be completely untrue, but it's really fun to just highlight. So one of the things that we've heard said about Camp Benton is that they, in the middle of the camp, placed this really large oven to make food for the camp. And as a result of using it over and over again, it actually made the land kind of go infertile essentially forever in that spot. All right, just because they had this hot stove sitting there in this field. And I'm probably making this up, but I would just note in this field here, there is this weird circular kind of dark spot that if you look at the overhead imagery over time, you will see is kind of persistently there through time. So perhaps that is the spot of where that stove was located. The other thing, and I I love this. I don't know. I don't necessarily buy this, but there's some speculation that in this painting that Winslow Homer did, that this log structure um, is the same as this log structure, which let's see, would be the same as this log structure, which still stands next to the farmhouse today. Um, they are similar looking, for sure. Um, I'm not sure, just given the way the painting is depicted, the rise of the hill, like I'm not sure I buy into that, but nevertheless, it's really fun to think that this little smokehouse, which is still standing down there off Westerly Road, makes its way into a very famous painting by Winslow Homer that is in um, the museum somewhere in DC, right? So just kind of a fun fact. But again, able to go from that initial picture of the band down to a pretty specific spot in the middle of a field that is out there off Westerly Road, to kind of locate the positioning of this unit. This one, this is a more recent one and a really fun one. It's a combination of something that somebody posted on my Historic Ag Reserve Facebook page, and then a question I got. I don't know if Jeff Sipek's on here, but he sent me this picture just this morning, and it just happened to be something that I had actually been thinking about and looking at recently. So he sent me this. This is, a reconstruction of a painting. And it says, you can see that it's Camp at Poolesville, 1862. So again, that same Civil War time frame. This is a unit from New Hampshire. And Jeff's question to me was, this building labeled number 20 and the far left over here is labeled Gott's house. And he said, which house do you think that is in town? Is it possible that it's the same house as one of the ones that's kind of right in the center of town at the crossroads, or is it something else? All right, so kind of an interesting mystery to solve here to figure this out. So the very, very first thing that I thought of when I saw this painting was this one. So this one is hanging up in the John Pool house. I know for sure there's one version of it there. I know it's been printed out many times. I've seen it on the walls of other people's homes in town. But this is another painting from an artist. I think this was painted well after the Civil War, but kind of reconstructing the scene based on, some different maps and different understandings of like troop locations and building structures during the Civil War. And when we see this, when you look at this painting, this is like always a fun one for me to like quiz my kids if they can figure out where different houses are, but just to kind of orient you to the map. So right here, right in the center, this would be like the main four-way intersection in Poolesville today, right? So this is kind of that main center of town. Many of the buildings right here in the center were destroyed by fire. Actually, I was just looking at one of Jim's really cool drawings that he did showing kind of the destruction from the fires in the 1920s and 30s, where we lost a bunch of these buildings. But there are still some that are standing. So if we look down here, this is the Dr. Poole house. This was the Blue Hearth, across from John's hardware store now. So that one's pretty obvious. This over here was the old, I think it was the old town hall, the old Methodist church. Now it's being restored into uh, Dave from Locals' new art center is taking over this building here. Um, if you look again towards the center of town, over here, this building, this would be actually I think it's this one, is Locals right here. That's that structure from the 1840s. I think this is the initial structure of what is now Jameson Real Estate. Um, Here's the old church that is now the dry cleaners. It's that like that yellow church, right? So you get the idea. This is Main Street coming through. And so the question was like, okay, can I find, is this building number 20 also in here? And I think it is. I think it's all the way up here, very, very top left. I think that's it. Um, why do I think that? I think that because I know that in this painting, the New Hampshire unit is depicted as this being their camp. So that's one reason. The other reason is if you notice kind of, I mean, again, this is paintings, so this is artist renditions, so there's probably some inaccuracies here, but just notice kind of this like L shape of the camp. And I just want you to kind of take note of that here, right? And just the positioning of the home. It's probable that both artists who painted these two things were working off the same materials, but so that's the other reason that I think it's that. And so then the question is like, okay, what if we know generally where outside of town, or at least at that point, although this is in town now, if we know that this is this house we're looking for, where is it today, right? What does the house look like today? So, oh, here's another one. Another picture that I've seen a lot of people, a lot of houses around town. This is just another depiction from 1863. Actually, this is how I knew that that New Hampshire unit was up here because it's labeled in this one. And I believe this is that house up there again, kind of that upper left area. So not in the main center of town, but out here. Um, and then what I always like to do is use maps to try to figure out if I can get a name. And what's really great is the Martinet and Bond map from 1879, obviously after the end of the Civil War, but pretty close to it. So we can get a general sense of what structures were around at that time. And also what's so great about that map is it puts the names of the owners next to the structures. And so I would expect the house to be out in this area. And it just so happens that Thomas Scott literally has his name attached to this one. And again, we know number 20 is labeled Gott's house, right? So I think that's a pretty good confirmation that we're probably looking at a house that's in this area. Okay, but this map is from 1879. So obviously things have changed since then. So what does that look like? Um, so this is where I like to go to. So Montgomery County has a bunch of layers of imagery, meaning that are free that you can access, and it's interactive, so you can zoom in and out of it. And I've used this all the time. You've seen plenty of pictures from me showing, different dates and times. The imagery starts in, I think it's 1951, and then you've got, every couple of years or so, another like updated overhead shot. So it's really great because what you can do is you can focus on one space in the ground and then see how it changes through these years, right? So when we look at this is Poolesville, and if we look at Poolesville, I want to say that this shot is from maybe the late 50s or early 60s. There's been a little bit of development in the center of town, but just to kind of again like orient you, this is the main street, Fisher coming through and going out. Um, this would be Hughes Road coming through here. So you would see, like those of you that live in Westerly, which is the neighborhood I live in, That's in here, right? Obviously, we don't see any houses yet. We know, I know that the houses in Westerly were built starting in around 1971, right? So this picture is before 71, after 55, somewhere in that zone. And so as I'm looking kind of outside of town in that area where I think this got farmhouse might be, this is really the only structure. And again, you can't really see many details here, but this is really the only structure that makes a whole lot of sense. So I think that this is that farm and the farm structures. Um, so now if we go to, I think this is from 2024, 2023, exact same spot on the map, we can see that, now that structure is no longer well outside of town. It's very much where Chiswell Road is running in Westerly, in my neighborhood, right? And so that's kind of interesting. It tells me, A, that unless I've missed something, there is no big old historic home right in the middle of the Westerly neighborhood here somewhere on Chiswell Road. I know I live on Chiswell, so I know that that's not there. So we know that the house is now gone. Um, but like, is there anything left? Is there any kind of remnants? And so I put this online, and what was really, really cool was, and this is the beauty of a small town and social media, is very quickly somebody chimed in and told me, hey, I forget if it was their house or their neighbors, but in the backyard, there's this old well, and it seems to be in that same general location you're pointing to. And we've never been sure like what that was. And this is this well, right? And so it's just, it's cool. Like this is based on the location of the house where this individual took this picture. I am 100% positive that this well is associated with that farm that at least was there in the 60s, which I believe is the Gott farm, right? So the house is long gone, but we still have some remnants of structures around, which I think is kind of cool. He even sent a picture. It's a pretty deep well looking down into it. It's and just to be clear, so you'll see cement here, and you might be thinking like, okay, well, that's cement. That's not like from the 1860s or 70s. It's actually cement with brick and stone on the inside of this. So the cement was kind of put up there later. Um, but just kind of cool. So if you live in town, even if you're in a neighborhood where houses are relatively new, remember that long before you were here, somebody else was. And if you're anywhere near Poolsville, it's almost guaranteed that your house at one point was in the middle of some field or farmland. And so if you have weird things in your yard that you've never been able to quite account for, understand what the heck is this thing, it's very, very possible that that's some remnants from some prior farmstead. So again, just kind of cool to pinpoint a location on the ground to target like a spot from that old painting that Jeff Sypik sent me. And then this is the final one that I'll walk through. But so for those of you that live in Hunter's Run, or those of you that have walked through there or been in that neighborhood, there's a big, really beautiful house on the corner, kind of up near like the top of Helmo's Park. It's a new house from like the 1990s, but right next to it, you'll see this stone structure. This is kind of what it looks like from the road. Obviously, very old. Um, you can see it here. Again, here's Hoskinson Road. This is kind of the upper baseball field at Helmo's Park here. There's this big pond behind the house, which is kind of cool. But this stone structure is located here. So that picture I just showed you is like me standing here or something and taking this picture. This is the owners were nice and let me, go take closer up pictures. This is what it looks like up close. Um, one question is, what was this structure? It's got a chimney, so it wasn't just a shed. So it was either probably like a summer kitchen, because a lot of times, in the 1800s, they would build these summer kitchens separate from the main home in case, fire broke out in the kitchen, it wouldn't take the whole house with it. Um, Also completely possible that this was an enslaved quarters. We know that there were many enslaved working the fields all around and in Poolesville. And so very possible, given that there's a fireplace here, that it could have been that as well. So when we go and look, I know the general location of the house, obviously, in Hunter's Run. And so I used a site called Medusa, which is a Maryland historical resource site that has a map. I'll show it to you in a second if you haven't seen it before. But we can kind of figure out quickly what farmstead this is based on the map. And there was a lot of reporting in the 1970s where individuals with the county went around and cataloged a bunch of old homes and structures in the area. And so these are the pictures they actually got of this farm. Now, what's frustrating is they didn't get pictures of the actual main house here. I would have loved to seen what that looked like because this shed and this quarters here, this is again, this is what we're looking at. I think this is the other side of it. I think this is two-sided. Um, they've got pictures of these, which are very well built, and so I would have been interested to see like what the main structure of the farm looked like, but we didn't get pictures of it. I now think it's because in 1976, when these pictures were taken, the main farmhouse was gone. But let me show you why I think that. So again, if we go back to that imagery, this is from the late 1950s. I think this is 59. We know the general spot on the map where this is. I spend so much time on these maps that it's very easy for me to like very quickly figure out where this is in relation to today. And so on these left and right are the same. I'm just labeling on the right. And we can see kind of this driveway coming off Hughes Road. Obviously, there's no Hunter's Run neighborhood here in the 1950s. Hunter's Run came in, I want to say, the early 90s. We can see a bunch of structures here, the farmhouse, little stone chimney. As we get into the 70s, the imagery through time gets better, right? Because technology is improving as we would expect. And we can see, the structures. We're also seeing the formation of this pond behind the house. So I've had people in the past tell me like, oh, that pond back there is like really, really old. Not really. It's from like the 70s. So that's back there. And then in the early 90s, we start seeing Hunter's Run taking shape. We've got the pond that's gotten bigger. We have still that stone structure standing there through time, right? So that has not changed. So then what I always like to do is there's this website called Vintage Aerial. I think I've shown you some pictures from here before. And what it does is essentially somebody in the late 70s and early 80s, I think flying out of like the Frederick Airport, flew all around here and just took a ton of pictures looking down at structures all over the place, which I'm really glad they did because now we've got a lot of pictures. The problem is they aren't labeled in any way at all. They're loosely tied to different spots on the map, but very loosely. And so I end up spending more time than I care to admit, kind of looking through them, trying to figure out, do I recognize this spot? And this one took me a long time to kind of identify. But this is that farm. And the way that I know it is, if you remember when you were looking back here, just notice kind of this weird like V shape of the driveway. That was probably the biggest tell. That's what we're looking at here. You can see kind of that curve. And then when you start to like really focus in and look at the picture deeply, it's kind of hidden back here in the woods, but we can see again that stone structure there. Don't see any main house. And again, that's because, so here's kind of the curve of the driveway, the structure, the stone structures up in here. This was like a little tenant's farmhouse I think this picture was taken in the early 80s. So the main structure is gone, which again is why I think we don't have a picture of it from that 70s report. But when we look at the map on the overhead, we can see again, not far from the Gott house we were just talking about, but that this was the Frederick Pool farmstead. I know it because it kind of ties to this location on the map. I also know it because in that 1970s report, they labeled those pictures as being from this place. So that part of the mystery was not too difficult to figure out. Um, so again, what that allows us to do then is to go in and learn more about the pools, learn more about their history, and perhaps try to figure out is that what was that structure. It gives us some more sense of what that was. So let me just show you a couple of tools that I really like to use in case you find them interesting and want to do the same. Um, Google Earth I live on. You're all familiar with it, but I spend so much time on Google Earth looking at things that the more you look at this, the quicker you'll find stuff. So that's a big resource. Medusa, which is the resource I was telling you about earlier. Many of you who do history stuff probably are well aware of this, but what's really great about it is um, it gives you on the map locations of historic structures that have been cataloged throughout this area. And let me see, of course, it's going to like load really slow now that I've got it on the screen for you. But when we zoom in on different locations, it gives us these little red dots that you can kind of see down here. There we go. It gives us these little red dots. So here's Poolsville in the center. So if you're interested in like historic homes and you know the general location, you just got to kind of go find the dot. So that one we were just looking at, for example, I know it's off Hillard in Hoskinson. So if we click on this structure, it tells us it's the Frederick Pool House. And then when we open that up, there's going to be this file and we can go essentially read what was cataloged. Some records are better than others. Here's that building. You can see here, we don't get many details from this record. We do get these great pictures, but that's it. There's not much of a write-up on who Frederick Pool was. They call that structure a slave quarters. That's very possible that's what it was, but I also think it could have been a summer kitchen, right? So that's one resource. The Martinet and Bond map is amazing. This is from the it's from 1865, actually. I thought it was later than that. So 1865, Library of Congress has it. And what's great about it is like you can zoom in and it will zoom with you. And so it's kind of cool because you can really, this is super useful if you know there's an old house and you're trying to figure out who built this thing or like what's the history of this place. Starting here is kind of awesome, again, because we have the ownership. And then if you want to look at the Hopkins Atlas, which is from the 1870s, so a little bit later, 1879, I think, it does the same thing. And you can see Poolsville is actually growing. There's more names around town in the 1870s. And you can even start to it's kind of fun, but you can actually start to see how different roads are taking shape here. The one thing you have to really remember on Hopkins that is really confusing is that the North Star is going this direction. So like you got to kind of tilt everything in your brain to make it make sense. Like Bellsville is not east of us, it's north of us. And so, that's always something I'm thinking about here. Medusa, I showed you. Yeah, and then these are the free map viewers from Montgomery County. So just to show you what this looks like, if we hover over Poolsville here, and you can see kind of the legend here, we can see here's all the different years that we've got this overhead imagery going back to 1951. So if we look at it in 1951, and I'm sure it'll take forever to load, but what it will give us is some of those early imagery shots from that time period. Let's see if any of these other are faster. Okay, so here's 2015. Let's see. Let's see if it'll show us. Here's 79. So you can see, you can see the high school here. You can see the track. That's always like an easy one. The elementary school, I don't think of it necessarily as a square, but that's basically what it is when you look at it from above. So that's always a good reference point. You can see Wesman and Westerly coming in. If we go back further, let's see if 1970 will work for us. Yeah, 1970. So 1970, Westerly is just getting started and being built, right? So this is kind of the upper section of it. A lot of it stretches out through here. Um, the other thing, I didn't really think about this earlier, but remember that house was called the Gott Farmhouse. It's basically where Gott Street is today. So I'm sure that there's no coincidence to that. I'm sure that they took that into consideration as they were naming the roads up here. But it would have been right in this location, right? So it was probably pretty recently torn down when this picture was taken. So my guess would be that that farmhouse came down probably late 1960s. Um, and then I just wanted to see if the 50s will work. Yeah. So in the 50s, it's really cool because you can just see how small Poolsville was. Um, it's just hard because the imagery is, you can't, it's harder to zoom in, but you can just really get a sense of just how rural this space is at that point in time, which again, no surprise. So anyway, with all of that, I will stop and happy to answer any questions anybody has any, and we'll go from there.
Great topic. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks.
Hey, Kenny, it's Tom Kettler. On
Yeah.
that one, and I know Jimmy Poole's on the call. I see. I think that painting you were showing halfway through the presentation that's in the John Poole house. I think he did that, if I'm not.
Oh, is that?
And I think he did it. My interpretation was he did that based on that 1863 sketch. It's kind of an artist's interpretation, but maybe Mr. Poole can jump in on that.
If Jim did it, I'm very confident in its accuracy.
Not accurate.
Did you do it?
I did it.
Yeah.
But you don't think it's accurate? So the troop locations you don't think are accurate or what?
The troops things that are right, but
Yeah.
It took a little artistic, but
some houses weren't there yet.
Okay.
Like the Baptist church wasn't there, the dry cleaning place, and the building next to it was Ellis Price built in the 1880s.
Okay. All right. But we're in generally the right general decade.
I kind of have them in the right place.
Yeah. That's cool. I don't feel like I'm Tom, I'm glad you pointed that out. I don't feel like I love looking at that thing.
Jimmy, did you use that 1863 drawing from that soldier as your base, or it seemed like you did?
Kind of, but I already knew where the camps were.
Right. So you took some artistic license, as we say.
Anytime I found a picture of a house of that time period that was in the town, I tried to copy it.
Got it.
That's cool. You don't often talk about a painting, then find out the painter is literally on the Zoom call with you.
Exactly. Thought you'd like to know that, Kenny.
I was snowed in for a week down on NIH farm, and I didn't have any paper, so I used a piece of drywall.
That's cool.
I used watercolors because I didn't have any oils.
That's amazing. That's so cool. I didn't know that. Huh.
Talk about government. When I retired from the government, they actually tore my building down. So, yeah, I was watching your aerials and on the Williams farm, and one of those little zigzags on Edwards Ferry Road was a graveyard.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because in 1865, grave registry came and dug up all the Yankees because they thought we were going to do nasty things to the corpses.
Right.
Took them down to Annapolis.
So are those graves still there? Do they move them?
They moved them. They moved them all to National Cemetery.
Oh, wow. Okay.
The records they left were all numbers, so I don't know who the soldiers were. And when I went down to the archives, they couldn't find the what's called the key.
Yeah, to show you the
had the name.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll have to look at that. That's fascinating.
It's in my notes. Oh, what else? Yeah. Well, that Frederick S. Poole place, maybe he never had a house because he lived in town.
Oh, okay.
He lived next to Larry's. long white brick or stucco house next to Dr. Frederick Pool.
Oh, yeah.
That was
Oh, I guess that, yeah, I guess that is that this? So I guess that's right. That is also the Frederick Poole house. So do you think that was the main house there in the center of town, and then that was his farmland backing all the way out there?
well, the John Poole side of my family had money and they bought off everything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
My side
Oh.
didn't have much. We didn't even own slaves. That's what's kind of funny.
Yeah.
You have to name a school after him and not mine. Oh, well, it's a good one.
Oh,
So Kenny, where,
Right.
where, I know this has to be general, but where was the Gott farmhouse? It was it,
it's I'll show you.
okay,
So, okay, so this is Google Earth over Poolsville. Um, here's the high school. Here's like Wooten Avenue.
yeah,
This is like the Westerly neighborhood.
right,
So here's Chiswell coming through. And
yeah,
it was basically like right in here.
And pretty close to Gott Street if you look at it that, Kenny.
Yeah. Yeah.
really,
Over to the
Yep.
right. Yeah, right there.
Yep, there's Gott Street, right? So,
yeah,
I'm sure they did on purpose.
right,
So yeah, I mean, I think it was basically in here. I forget
Wow.
which specific one. It was one of these houses in here that had that well in the backyard, which I just
okay,
thought was so cool that somebody still had that.
that's what I was wondering.
Yeah,
Wow.
The
yeah,
Gott,
it's one of these in here. I
Huh,
in my own backyard, so I live where do I live? I live here,
yeah,
and in my backyard back in this corner, there's this really big like cement like cylindrical thing coming out of the ground that I don't know exactly what it is, but it looks to me like a property line marker.
hmm,
Probably from some farm a long time ago, or maybe just it could just be tied to construction of the structures around here, but it really kind of is very different from anything else in the yard. So I've always wondered what that is.
during the war, Gott owned from 107 all the way to Willett Road.
Yeah, right. So basically everything in here.
Yeah, everything from road to road.
Yeah. Yep.
And at the entrance of this farmland, there used to be a baseball field. That's where all the little leagues used to play.
Oh, like up here in this part?
Yeah,
Huh.
you go in about 400 yards, and there's a ball diamond. It doesn't show up in that whole 51 photo, but
Yeah, I wonder.
wow.
it does show up in the 63.
Okay, I'll have to look. That's kind of cool.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah. Huh. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Jimmy, it's Tom again, Tom Kettler. Where was when they had the agricultural fair out in Poolsville? Where was that? Do you know where they held it back in like wasn't the 30s or something, 40s?
In the 40s, 30s, 20s.
Yeah, it was a big deal. Do you know where they held it?
Yeah, on the
It's the high school, right?
east side of the school, I guess.
Yeah.
Because all the photographs show the backside of the high school.
And the backside of the high school and the backside of I forget the name of that big white house there right next to the high school, Tom, on Wooten.
Uh-huh.
You can see the back of it from pictures down in here.
Dr.
Okay.
House.
Interesting, yeah. So it's all basically on where the school is now?
No,
No. Okay.
the school hasn't gotten there yet. It's growing, but it hasn't got there yet.
Right.
And when I went to school, stuff that was on Wooten Avenue, the side there was a barn, an old log barn that belonged, or a wooden barn that belonged to the house across the road.
Interesting.
Well,
kids.
is that the barn that's still there on the school
No.
property? No,
No.
that's different. Okay.
Interesting. Yep, it's changed a lot.
You know, that big,
Pretty recent.
yeah.
Kenny, I find it very, very impressive that you're able to navigate these tools so quickly and easily. You show familiarity with them.
I'm not exaggerating, Beth, when I tell you like I spend a lot of time on Google Earth on a daily basis for a whole range of things. So like it's at this point, if I get lost somewhere around town, bad things are happening. So
Well, thank you very much for your presentation. It was really cool, very
Yeah.
informational.
Good.
Thank you.
Good, absolutely. Yeah, it's great being with y'all.
And I
Very
hope-
enlightening. And thanks, Jim, for everything you gave Kenny.
Yeah, and the painting, I didn't realize that was your work. That's awesome.
Yeah, that is cool.
Side note about that log smokehouse. Outside of Poozle, going down White Cherry Road, was Benson's farm. It had a 42nd New York camp there, and the barn up on the hill. The old bank barn was built in 1865, and all the rafters underneath the floors are made out of their old log cabins.
Really?
So you
What road is that on?
White Cherry.
Huh.
When I was a kid, it was called Heflin Farm, and then it
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Okay. Yep.
became Carton Farm, and now it's something else.
Yeah.
Let it.
Interesting. Cool. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Kenny.
Have a good night.
Have a good evening.
I know.
Good to be back.